Yeah. Thank you. Good evening. So, English medium batch. So, what we are going to discuss before we start with, today's lecture, let me just introduce myself, and then in general, I'll first talk about what we are going to do throughout the year and in basics pillars of, you can say, preparation, and then we will go through the syllabus and the points. Okay. So myself, Pravin Patil, I have been teaching here for GS paper 2 since 15 years. I've taught other subjects also, but mainly the focus is on GS paper 2, that is polity and Indian Constitution. And henceforth, for a year, I'll be discussing GS paper 2 and its components with you. Now, so far as these lectures are concerned, let me briefly let you know like what we are doing as of now. You must be knowing that these are some sort of introductory lectures, right? So first day, Tukaram sir, I think, had an interaction with you. Then yesterday, Pankaj sir had an interaction. He must have discussed history and part of history syllabus from GS, right? So he'll be teaching you GS, Modern India and all. We will be today discussing GS paper 2, followed by these lectures are in continuity, like followed by some other topics. The schedule must be there with you already. The purpose of arranging these lectures is basically to introduce you with the syllabus and a brief idea about scope of the syllabus and the points in the syllabus. That way, otherwise, it is really difficult to let you know in one single lecture the complete scope of this syllabus and then type of questions that UPSC may ask and level of preparation that is expected from an aspirant. But then still, intentionally, we have been doing this, for now quite a long time. Almost with every batch, we do this experiment intentionally. Because there are some of you, those who might have come from 3 years integrated batch, I guess, right? And those might be having some idea about what syllabus is. I'm saying some idea about it. Some of you might have already by-hearted it, possibility. And the others are together new to this particular exercise or maybe this particular exam. For them, we think that it is necessary that we must introduce the syllabus because that is what is the first foundational pillar of your preparation, right? And only then you can think of preparing on other aspects, or maybe you first need to know like what are they prescribing as a syllabus which you need to prepare on, correct? So that's the reason why we have arranged these lectures, and these have been sort of open lectures. Though such types of things are available online, we know that, but then still we intentionally keep it doing. The reason is, in classroom and studying these things and or maybe listening it from the faculties here is altogether a different experience, and every teacher, every faculty has his or her own understanding of that topic, right? And his or her own understanding of scope, like what may UPSC ask, right? So it is necessary that such introduction should take place almost every year and for every single batch. So that's why these lectures have been arranged. Second, now I should talk about, or I would like to talk about some important pillars that you people must keep in mind while you are preparing for UPSC and for that matter, any other competitive exam. Of course, I'm talking about civil services, whether state or national. So here we are talking about UPSC, Union Public Service Commission. According to me, there are few important things that one must always keep in mind without fail. First and the foremost is you must know line by line, point by point, what is the syllabus for each paper and each subject. Syllabus is prescribed by UPSC. That is really very important point to be noted. You may consider, like, might be, like, listening from people, might have got some inputs from so-called seniors that, they may ask anything, like it is UPSC exam. No, that's not the case. If that would have been the case, they would have not prescribed the syllabus then, isn't it? Right? They have taken efforts to prescribe it. GS1 will include these subjects and not just subjects, right? They have given it in detail, pretty much detail. I don't say that they have given it in elaboration. Of course not. But then the points which are mentioned in the syllabus are sufficient for us to understand, to what extent or what topics do we need to prepare. Correct? So it is important that you must know syllabus point by point for each and every paper and each and every subject, right? And that may need you to by heart it so that you can memorize it, or it may be the case that you are simply, reading it regularly every day, right? And so somehow you manage to remember it. That's your way, right? But you must remember each and every line of your syllabus. Syllabus is given by UPSC. It is available on UPSC's website also, right? Or on the other hand, we have also given you the handouts, right? So there is a syllabus, and that syllabus is exactly the way UPSC has given. We have not added anything in it and not deleted or say removed anything from that particular thing. We have simply arranged it. I think you might be having it in a tabular form, in a box type, right? So we have simply arranged it for our convenience, nothing else, right? For the convenience of students. We have not added anything, neither removed anything. So it is as it is. And that's what we think is important. We should follow the way UPSC has said. Otherwise, you will get some, online material wherein the syllabus has been given at length. So how do they manage to do that? It is very simple thing. They take previous year question papers, they read it, and accordingly, whatever topics have been asked, like they will keep adding those topics under these subheadings or headings. We think that that is not an ideal or correct way of doing the same. That it would be better if we focus on what is given and then we keep preparing, right? Of course, like this is first pillar. The second pillar is going to be previous year question papers. So what do we need to do is we simply will read or keep reading syllabus, and you will always on every lecture, you can say, or for every lecture or for every subject, you will simultaneously keep reading previous year question papers. That is second pillar of your preparation, right? Please don't forget this. Those who would not follow, right, or not ardently, passionately follow one of these pillars that I'm talking about, right? You can consider that that much delay will take place in your result. These are very crucial points. Syllabus, second is PYQ. Why PYQs? Previous year question papers. The reason being that gives you a direction. What, how, and on which topics UPSC is focusing. You are getting, right? I'll tell you, like, I'll give you an example, right? Which topics are being focused by UPSC and why, right? And how. Otherwise, if we start interpreting the syllabus and start looking at the depth or maybe the scope of the syllabus, we can actually go to, such a level that we will find completing one single point from the syllabus. We'll even find one complete year, to be inadequate. Right? So that year ka pura time, we'll find that it is not adequate, not sufficient enough to even cover one single point from syllabus. I'm saying point, not paper. Right. So do we really need to go to that level? Of course not. So where and how we will get to know, like, how much needs to be prepared? What is the source? Source is UPSC, previous year question papers. See, if they wanted to keep it sort of a secret, right? They would have never published the papers. They are asking us, or they are in fact telling us that, see, we are publishing papers, previous year question papers. We are also giving you syllabus. What else do you need? Right? Go ahead, read the syllabus, read the PYQs, and then refer whichever material you want, and just see to it that you align your information and your knowledge according to the demand of the exam. You are getting it? That is the second pillar. Previous year question papers. So without fail, initially, right from outset, inception, you may start reading it. I understand some of you may not understand anything from PYQ. That's absolutely fine. Getting it? That's absolutely fine. The expectation is not that you should immediately start writing or you are, coming up with good understanding of those. Not at all. What is expected? I'm reading it religiously. So if I'm reading some topic from say basic books, say NCERT, right? I will immediately go and see if there is any question that has been asked. If yes, what is the question? Getting it? And then see if you can manage to read same things, from books, from your books. Again, with that perspective. Perspective is very important. Approach, that is generally famously called as, is very important in preparation. So second point is your previous year question papers. So you will not forget that. Third, I'll tell you like how should you be doing that. Third pillar of your preparation should be current affairs. Now, the point is how and from which sources. So far as this question how is concerned, that I will talk. Source, the second question is simple source, newspaper. Right? And you will simultaneously, you may rely on some compilations. News compilations milte hain, right? They are available. And you must be reading some of the news compilations. You might be planning to do that. Right? Go ahead with it. No problem. You can keep reading news compilations, no issues. Monthly magazines, I think you must be aware about. There are monthly magazines published by different websites and different classes and etc. Go ahead with it. No problem. You keep reading it. No issues with that. Don't forget reading a newspaper every day. How many of you have seen recent 2023 Prelims papers? Oh, great. How was it? Pretty easy, right? No, I thought it is easy. It was easy, basically. It wasn't difficult. Though they changed the pattern and that probably gave a shock. And so people couldn't manage to manage themselves basically in exam hall. Right? And so ultimate disaster. But otherwise, if you look at the questions that they have asked, right, they're not altogether out of box questions. They are not. Go ahead, like go back home and read them again. You will find that they're not absolutely out of box. Some of them are difficult, I agree. But there are always, like every year, you'll find few questions which are, you may call them out of box. The pattern and type of questions that they asked this time, I'm saying, that changed. And so people had a general perception that it was difficult. And in such difficult question paper also, there are people, those who have scored more than 120 marks. Now tell me, if it was so difficult, then how come people are scoring more? There is, I understand, there are certain aspects to it, right, which added little bit of difficulty in solving paper. I don't deny that. But please look at it and you will find that most of the questions that UPSC has asked, in prelims as well as in previous year mains question papers, you will find that they are essentially from current affairs. And that is the reason why I'm saying you, or I'm telling you to read a newspaper daily. Right? You shouldn't be, lethargic, at least so far as newspaper is concerned. There is no strategy, no smart way, to prepare current affairs. Read it every day. You can give 2 hours every day for reading newspaper. Is it really that difficult? It's not. If you genuinely want to prepare for it, it's really not difficult. Give 2 hours every day. Probably in initial time, maybe in first 1.5 months or maybe 2 months, you may find it difficult to complete newspaper in 2 hours. That's absolutely okay. No problem. Over the period of time, you will be in a position to complete it in 2 hours or so, 2 or 3 hours at the max. But that will exponentially give you benefits. Mark my word, it will give you benefits like anything. Because see, when you read newspapers for current, you're reading it not only for the purpose of study. You're also, it is a type of a joy if you sit and keep reading it every day. It is a very different sort of experience. But on the contrary, when you take those compilations, monthly compilations, you read them not as a newspaper, but as a book. As if like you want to prepare for current affairs and so you keep reading it. You don't get, and okay, fine. Apart from that, in addition to that, basically, do you really know the one who might have compiled those news in compilation? What is his or her approach? We don't know what is his or her approach towards exam. Whether even we don't even know whether he or she has even given the exam. Are you sure about it that somebody has given you some compilation? How sure about him or her are you that okay, he or she might have given an exam and has very good idea about what exam is? Don't blindly follow these things. You're getting it, everybody. Rely on yourself. Read PYQs, read syllabus, right? Ask teachers some questions, how to draft what is important from news, how to draft notes. That may take some time, little time, right? But over the period of time, you will evolve and you will find now you are comfortably reading newspaper in 2.5 hours or 3 hours at the max, and you are jotting down the notes, only specific required pinpoint notes. But for that, please understand that you will have to give yourself a time. Is it clear? Everybody, all of a sudden overnight change नहीं हो. आज तक कभी न्यूज़पेपर नहीं पढ़ा और कल से एकदम न्यूज़पेपर के नोट्स लिखने आ गए, ऐसे तो होगा नहीं. ये तो इतना समझ रहे हो आप. Am I correct? Everybody. So please see to it that you follow newspaper. And along with that, I also said that go ahead with any news compilation that you are habitual of reading or maybe you find more convenient. No problem. Read that because that gives you vast area to be covered. Multiple newspapers and things are being covered in comparisons. Absolutely fine. समझ में आई बात? Everybody, great, good. So that was third pillar of our preparation. Fourth and last is practice. Practice for prelims and practice for mains. Now, before you practice, please understand, you must know what is to be practiced. That means you first need to know the subject. You first need to understand the subject, right? You must be comfortable with that particular subject. Only then you can think of writing practice or solving question papers. I am making it very simple for you to understand. So not at the beginning. There are people, those who are students basically. They have a habit. Initially, I'm starting preparation, sir. I have written few answers. No, what for? Like, do you really know the question? Do you really know and understand the topic? There are people, those who directly would, start writing practice. Correct? एकदम incorrect way about preparation. समझ में आ रही है बात सब? Everybody. चलिए अभी अगर ऐसा एग्जांपल ही ले हम लोग. I'll give you an example. So quantum mechanics and quantum physics has been doing really great things recently. Or let's take an example. I'll give you a question and see if you can write immediately. How the space stations are built. Explain step by step in 200 words. अब हमने पढ़ा ही नहीं है, समझ लीजिए उसको, या फिर स्पेसक्राफ्ट कैसे बिल्ड होता है, नहीं पढ़ा है कभी यार, तो क्या लिखोगे आप? राइटिंग प्रैक्टिस का मतलब क्या हुआ? आपको पहले मालूम होना चाहिए. You read things, basic things, your reference books, right? Think about it, get some current material, get some facts, get some examples, right? Keep that ready and only then start writing. So none of you should immediately jump into that so-called writing practice fever. Don't do that. Give yourself a time, right? But then you will have to do that. Extensively करना पड़ेगा. ये बात मैं बिल्कुल बोल रहा हूँ वापस again. We will have to do that maybe for continuously for 5-6 months, right? You will have to do that for prelims also continuously for 5-6 months, maybe more than that, right? CSAT, for example, it was quite tough. Maybe at least maths was not that easy this time. So some of you may have to practice it and practice it for longer duration. Maybe you may have, some of you may have a plan of a year that I will every day give half an hour or maybe an hour for practicing CSAT. Are you all getting this? Everybody. So these are 4 pillars of your preparation: syllabus, PYQs, current affairs, and practice. Clear? Right? Apart from what is being taught here, apart from what you are reading, right? These 4 important components of your preparation, you should not miss any of them. That would cost you a lot. Clear? Everybody? Very good. So that is something which I wanted to share with you in general. Let's turn to our today's topic, GS paper 2. Right? I will discuss syllabus and I will be as brief as possible. I will not unnecessarily stretch any point, at least today. Once we start the lectures, right, I will explain you in detail. Right? So what we have here is GS paper 2 and syllabus for GS paper 2. Let's look at it. GS paper 2 is divided basically into major 2 components. One that deals with polity, and second is IR, international relations. So polity and governance, you may say, or constitution, and then IR. Out of these 2 sections, I will be discussing and teaching you only this section. IR will be taught by another faculty. So there we are going to arrange a lecture, introductory lecture for IR as well, very soon. Right? So basically, today we will be focusing on this first part of GS paper 2. Right? So Indian polity and constitution and governance, social justice and development process. So for our convenience of, for you to understand, comprehend the syllabus as well as for me to teach you, I have sort of divided into 4, parts. I have divided this syllabus into 4 parts. So first is Indian constitution, constitutional scheme and different agencies under constitution. Then we will talk about governance. Then there is a word in your syllabus in very first line, social justice. Right? So we will talk about that. And then developmental process. So basically, this GS paper 2 is that way, divided into 4 different components, and we will discuss these components one by one. Right? If you could understand what is being taught here, like in first component and its relation with this, then probably you will be in a position to understand this and then this. There is a link, right, which flows straight from this constitutional document till development process, and I will explain it that way only. So let's go one by one. एक बार हम लोग देखते हैं पूरा syllabus एक point करके. If you have any query, you can ask me while discussing. So Indian Constitution, first point of our syllabus. Here you have historical underpinnings, right? Historical underpinnings. This basically says that historical background or historical, the roots of the Constitution. So underpinnings is nothing but the roots, or you can say underpinning is nothing but historical factors which resulted into creation of our Constitution. So can you list a few? Government of India Act 1935. Very good, 1935. Right. Yes. Anything else? Or can we say that probably major legislative initiatives taken by or laws passed by British government? British government. Correct? That is pre-independence time. Right. Anything else? Can we also consider that freedom struggle? Do you think the freedom struggle and the Events which took place in freedom struggle might have also influenced constitution making. Yes, it might. Along with that, Constituent Assembly debates, when the Constituent Assembly was formed, and things which were discussed in Constituent Assembly, probably those discussions might have also contributed. In fact, they contributed heavily in framing of our Constitution. Correct. So at least these three major points we can actually talk about and think about when it comes to historical underpinnings. There are several other points which we can actually add here, but then of course at least three major points can definitely be considered as a part and parcel of historical underpinnings. What do we need to do and what UPSC expects from us? If, as I said, like I'll let you know the scope, right? So if we consider history and start looking for all historical roots of Indian Constitution, right? And just wanted to connect, let's say like we decide to connect some of the historical events, right, or past events with Indian Constitution. You can go to ancient and medieval India also to find some connection with Indian Constitution. You can definitely find few such convincing connections, let me tell you. But then, do we really need to prepare this topic to that level? Of course not, right? Or probably not. So, what do we need to do? What is expected of them? So we are basically here under this topic. We are expected to look at essentially at modern period, right? And the historical underpinnings, or roots in modern period, which went on to shape our constitution. Clear? Everybody? Good. So that's how we will look at it. Now there is next point, and that is evolution. Now the question is, how is evolution different from historical underpinnings? Evolution is essentially post constitution. So post constitution, 1950 onwards. 1950 onwards. Now what it includes? See, it includes amendments, right? And it also includes basic structure, right? Recently we completed 50 years of basic structure. 24th of April, 1970. Very good, 1973. Clarification on the word. So evolution, is basically how has your constitution evolved after its commencement. So 1950 onwards till date, and your constitution is still evolving. It will keep evolving. No constitutions are permanent, and there's no constitutions are stagnant. If they happen to be stagnant, you will find that you will throw them away and you will bring in new constitution. So simple as that. Correct? Yes or no? Right? We call this constitution to be our constitution. And what for? 75 years ago it was framed. Why do you consider it to be our constitution? The reason being it still answers or takes care of your concerns today. You went on to ask a constitution whether we have a right to privacy or not. Constitution said that yes, you do have. But we didn't ask that question, in 1950s or 60s to the constitution. Constitution said nothing about it. Today you asked it and it said that yes, it is. Right? So it serves the needs of time. And so no constitution for that matter can be considered as stagnant. Right? The constitutions are generally framed as collection of values which carry the characteristic of feature of timelessness. They exist in perpetuity. They don't become irrelevant with time. All these values, abstract values which we will find, they are there in the constitution. And these are perpetuating values, or these are basically sort of universal values which will be applicable in every time. Everybody, very good. And so we say that the constitution would always evolve because it would deal with people at different point of time in some nation state's history. So the same society, Indian society in 1950, right, is different from 1960s or 70s or 80s, or for that matter, for 21st century. So the society that we are today referring to as Indian society is very different than the society which was referred to as Indian society in 1950s and 60s, right? But the same set of laws or same constitution served their needs that time and is serving our needs today. Getting it? So it traveled through time. Now, if it has traveled through time and survived, right? So you must be knowing Darwin says that survival of yes. So why and who is fit then? The one who. And what are the ways of evolution then? See, amendments. And the basic structure basically is not basic structure I'm talking about, but this is, court's interpretation of constitutional provisions. And court will interpret constitution and make it more relevant with time. That means aid or help constitution to evolve. Now, you must be knowing that recently people have filed petition in Supreme Court demanding right to marry. Right? What they want? Court to recognize right to marry. Marry, right to marriage of same sex marriage. So court engaged into debate. Court said that okay, fine, we will listen to you. And we will check whether constitution says yes to it or not. Now they have not yet declared the judgment has not been pronounced yet, but it will surely come in, after vacation, the judgment will be pronounced. Whatever it is, let's not look at it in positive or negative way, whether they recognize it, whether they read that in the constitution or not, right? Still, what you need to understand is, you need to understand the fact that some of us thought or believed that this constitution will take care of my right to marriage. And so they went on to ask the judiciary whether this constitution protects my right or not. Please let me know. Right? What if tomorrow judiciary says that no, under 21, your right to marry, that is marriage of same sex, is not recognized. Let's assume for what. What is then those who LGBTQA plus community, they would think that, oh, then this constitution is useless for me if it cannot recognize my basic right. For them, it is basic fundamental right, isn't it? Now, if it cannot recognize it, then what is the use of this constitution? But then we can say that wait. You have just explored one way. No, there is other way that you can bring in change in the constitution, and that is through amendment. Right? So you can bring in an amendment in the constitution, and something that was not added now can be explicitly added there, and you can say that now constitution serves the purpose. Clear? Right? So basically, it evolves with time. So under evolution, we will be talking about amendments, and we will be also talking about basic structure as well as some interpretations of the constitution by the Supreme Court. Clear? Everyone? And you may come across questions on this. They have asked questions on basic structure. They can repetitively keep asking questions on basic structure again. Fine? Right? Okay. Let's move to the next point. Now we have next point, or maybe words used here. Here you have something called as features, right? And there is something called as significant provisions of the constitution. Now again comes the question. How are features different from significant provisions? So features are basically characteristics of your constitution. जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल जस्ट गिविंग एन एग्जाम्पल, हम लोग किसी एक इंडिविजुअल को कैसे आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं? विजिबल जो कैरेक्टरिस्टिक फीचर्स दिखते हैं उससे आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं, तो उसके फीचर्स और उसकी क्वालिटीज अलग अलग होंगी. An individual has different qualities, faculties, right? But he appears, his or her appearance is different. Appearance is basically features here we are talking about. Qualities are basically special or significant, salient, outstanding features of the constitution. Are you getting it? I just gave you an example to understand, make a difference between features and. So features wise, you may say that our constitution is written constitution or unwritten constitution. If it is, whatever, like किसी constitution को आपको देखना, this division is not correct, technically speaking, but then still, because it is being generally used in common parlance, we may say that written and unwritten constitution. ये फीचर हो गए, तो रिटर्न है या नहीं रिटर्न है, सही बात है, समझ में आ रही बात? लेंदी है कि छोटा है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, अगेन फीचर है, समझ में आ रही बात? टेक्निकली रिटर्न है या फिर कैसे, वो यू कैन सी दैट देयर आर सम फीचर्स ऑफ दिस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन। किस तरह का सेटअप तैयार करता है, फेडरल करता है या फिर यूनिटरी करता है, ये आप फीचर्स में देखते हैं। लेंथीएस्ट नोन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है, ये फीचर होगा, सैलिएंट फीचर नहीं है ना, ये बेसिकली, या फिर सैलिएंट प्रोविजन नहीं है, ये बेसिकली फीचर होगा। सिग्निफिकेंट प्रोविजंस में क्या देखोगे आप, तो आप सिग्निफिकेंट प्रोविजंस में फंडामेंटल राइट्स की बात कर सकते हो, सिग्निफिकेंट प्रोविजंस में आप बात कर सकते हो जुडिशियल इंडिपेंडेंस। सिग्निफिकेंट प्रोविजंस में हम लोग बात करते हैं पार्लियामेंट्री सुप्रीमेसी, है ना। सिग्निफिकेंट प्रोविजंस में हम पार्ट 18 की बात कर सकते हैं, इमरजेंसी प्रोविजंस की। सिग्निफिकेंट प्रोविजंस में हम लोग बात कर सकते हैं कि फेडरल सेटअप हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, हम लोग बात करेंगे इसकी थोड़ा थोड़ा। तो ये कुछ सिग्निफिकेंट प्रोविजंस है। अब आप क्वेश्चन ये करेंगे हम लोग, अच्छा ये सिग्निफिकेंट कैसे बन गए, ये तो हमें यूएस के कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में भी दिखता है, ये हमें यूएस में दिखता है, या फिर कनाडा में दिखता है, ऑस्ट्रेलिया में दिखता है। ये जुडिशरी भी तो इंडिपेंडेंट यूएस में, कनाडा में है, ये पार्लियामेंट सुप्रीम है शायद इंग्लैंड में, है ना, या फिर इमरजेंसी प्रोविजंस किसी और कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में भी मिल जाएंगे। आप क्या बात कर रहे हो, ये कहां से सिग्निफिकेंट हो गए प्रोविजन? तो भाई देखो, आप समझ लो एक चीज, all constitutions across the globe, you'll find that in their main provisions are absolutely same. They're not different. Let me give you an example ले लेते हैं हम लोग, आपको समझेगा एकदम क्लियर डायरेक्ट पिन पॉइंट समझेगा। यहाँ पे अब जितने लोग बैठे हुए लगभग मेरे ख्याल से कुछ 60, 70, 80 के आसपास लोग। अब मैं अगर अब क्वेश्चन आपको ये पूछूं, देखिए ध्यान दीजिए, क्वेश्चन में ये पूछूं, हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू सिटिंग हियर don't have a backbone? Everybody has a skull. Great. Everybody, the common organs which I would list if I want, every one of you have common organs. Am I correct? Everyone. There is no difference. Everyone has. How then your appearance differs? If you have things in, I'm to say like all common things with you, which are absolutely same. Yes or no? You all have same things. The question is how the appearance differs. And the next question is how your behavioral pattern differs. Exactly in same way. Constitutions across the globe will carry probably more or less similar features. कुछ आपको मिल जाएंगे फेडरल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस, कुछ यूनिटरी भी मिल जाएंगे, लेकिन जितने यूनिटरी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस होंगे उनके मेन प्रोविजंस में वो एक जैसे ही लगेंगे, अलग नहीं दिखेंगे, है ना। कुछ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस में फंडामेंटल राइट्स के प्रोविजंस होंगे, कुछ में नहीं होंगे, लेकिन जिनमें होंगे वो मोर और लेस क्लोजली स्पेस्ड और एक जैसे ही दिखेंगे, जिनमें नहीं होंगे वो भी एक जैसे ही दिखेंगे। अगर समझ लीजिए नहीं है किसी, अगर कोई कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है, the constitutions are promoting democratic model, then all those constitutions in their main provisions which are promoting democratic type of a setup will appear same. They will not be different. In main provisions, I'm saying. In main provisions, they will appear same. However, when it comes to their implementation and when it comes to their practical application, you'll find that they bring in altogether different effects. So the Constitution of India, right, one of the finest and very beautifully written document, right, is molded or created in such a way that it serves the needs of this society. Now, the same constitution, if you bring and apply it to the Australia, you'll find that it will fail in one single day. And if you bring in some other constitution and try and apply here in India, considering that, no, in main provisions they are same, and why not it should work? It will not. It will fail in a day. Are you all getting this? Everybody. Everybody. So what is in that significant provision that we are talking about, or what are those provisions? Basically, those are the provisions which are being twisted little bit, changed little bit to cater to the needs of our system. And when you list them down, when you can identify them, and separate them, separately look at them, you'll find that this makes your constitution different from other constitutions, which applies to almost every single constitution and every single constitution in the world. Clear? Everybody. So we are a democracy. Australia is democracy. Canada is democracy. US is democracy. UK is democracy. But still we have all, we all have constitutions written say like basically codified, uncodified, doesn't matter. We all have constitutions. They all are preaching or promoting or establishing democratic setup. Still they are not same when it comes to implementation. So what differs is basically these similar looking features have been attuned to the needs of time as well as needs of that particular landmass or society, and so they become sort of country specific. Clear? Everyone? Very good. So what we will be discussing is, under this particular topic, we will talk about those significant aspects or provisions of Indian Constitution. Initially in first lecture, when we will talk about this, I will let you know those provisions and we will have a detailed discussion on the same. Brief discussion on the same. And later on, when we will start going through each and every chapter, that time I will let you know in detail what and how and where these provisions differ from rest of the provisions of other constitutions. The reason being, here you have one more if you can see, here you have one more point in your syllabus which says comparison with other countries. Now comes again difficulty. Does that mean that we will list down all the constitutions of across the world and start reading one by one? If we start doing that, like how long will it take for you to prepare just single point? Forget about UPSC and say like paper 4, paper 2, and we do have other papers also along with options. We cannot keep doing this. US का कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ले लिया, इस साल यूएस का कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पढ़ लिया, प्रिपेयर कर रहे हैं भाई इसके लिए, है ना? कल को कनाडा का ले लिया, वो पढ़ लिया. नहीं कंपैरिजन करवाना है ना, यूपीएससी पूछ लेगा एक 10 मार्क का क्वेश्चन, आप 10 साल पढ़ते रहो. समझ में आ रही है बात? So basically we do need to do this, no doubt, right? But then you will find that, that's why I say that current affairs becomes an important pillar of your preparation. You will find that this particular point is essentially linked with current. Last year we had Honorable President of India in his presidential elections, right? And on same time, France was also electing its president. So they asked a comparison between Indian and French presidential elections. See how precise are they? So that's why I say, like, read PYQs and you will be in a position to anticipate type of questions or at least issues which you can prepare fairly and can answer questions in minutes. You're getting this? Everybody, very good. So that is first part, you can say, of our slide. Next, we have union and state. Now, let me be very brief and simple in explaining this. If you look at the syllabus, this part also deals with the constitutional scheme, what has been given in the constitution. So here we are talking about two entities given in the constitution. Is एक है जिसको बोलेंगे आप we can call it as a union, which is in common terms of parlance is called as central government, right? And another is, and so basically we can create sort of a distinction, and that is national government, and second is regional government. Okay? Regions in India are called as states. Regions in US are also called as states. In other parts, they are not called as states. They have other provinces or maybe territories and etc. terminologies. But ultimately, this is what it is: national and regional. National government, regional government. National parliament, regional assemblies. National Supreme Court, regional high courts. Very good. National president, regional governors. Very good. Correct? National prime minister and here regional. Very good. Here, under this topic, we are basically talking about or going to discuss about this relationship or this arrangement or this structure. See what is mentioned here: functions, responsibilities, issues, and challenges pertaining to this arrangement. That is called as federal structure. I will explain you later on what federalism is and what is federal, what term federal means. But basically, federal is nothing but this: that every country or every constitution which claims itself to be a federal constitution, right, must essentially have this type of arrangement. Right, a sort of a mirror image of national government at regional level. ये आपको लगभग मिरर इमेज दिख जाएगा, समझ में आ रही बात? तो हमारे पास है क्या स्टेट्स में गवर्नर्स और उसके साथ साथ सीएम एंड सीएम का काउंसिल, जैसे पीएम और पीएम के काउंसिल है, उस तरह से स्टेट्स में आप देख सकते हो, राइट? जैसे सेंटर एंड एट सेंटर और एट यूनियन यू हैव President of India, executive head, constitutional head, right? At state you have governor, a constitutional head, correct? Correct, right? So at center you have Supreme Court, right? At state you have High Court. Though this division doesn't apply here, at least in Indian case, here it doesn't apply. Right? In India, this is different. This part is different, but then rest of it, legislature and executive, both at center and state have division. Okay? Every one of you? Great, very good. So basically we are talking about, like, you are expected to prepare on this topic. Functions, kiske? Union. Responsibilities, union. Functions of state and responsibilities of state. I'll just give you an example to understand this a little bit more. Like, see, we all collectively have created our state, our government, for national level issues. We have created national government, and for regional level issues, we have created regional governments. How and what for? Point number one, what we have done is we have identified different issues that we generally face at public domain, or in here we are not talking about private domain, public domain. Collectively हमारे क्या क्या concerns हो सकते हैं? जैसे समझ लीजिए हेल्थ है ना, पब्लिक हेल्थ के लिए कुछ अरेंजमेंट करने की जरूरत पड़ेगी, क्लीन ड्रिंकिंग वाटर, ट्रांसपोर्ट, लॉ एंड ऑर्डर, है ना, ऐसे बहुत सारे इश्यूज हम लोग लिस्ट करते जाए तो हमें एक लंबा सा लिस्ट मिलेगा, राइट? Out of that list, what did we do is we identified a few points which are locally important, regionally important, and to be solved or resolved regionally. And we identified few other points which are nationally important, nationally significant, which have to be taken care of at national level. बात समझी कुछ? Everybody. जैसे law and order, traffic in Pune University Circle. Now, for that, you will not call Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister of India. No, there is a traffic in Pune University Circle. Why don't you take care of it? Of course, it is not his responsibility. There is somebody who is responsible for it at local level, or maybe at regional level. Are you getting it? Everybody. But when it comes to, say, for example, there is Chinese aggression towards India in Chin region, and then state of Maharashtra and CM of Maharashtra immediately goes to China and is discussing on the same. That won't happen, right? You understand the difference, right? This aggression or maybe defense, right? Protection, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and protection of India and its landmass is responsibility of collective responsibility of all of us. And so we created national government, right? So that's what I'm saying. Functions and responsibilities of these two levels of government have been identified, have been categorized, and that's how their powers have been defined under Constitution. But what happens is, the interesting thing is, these both governments are working for same landmass. Maharashtra is in India. I hope you understand. Correct? And Maharashtrians are equally citizens of India. Yes or no? Right. Now the question is, if both these governments are to work for same set of people and landmass, right? Will they not come across a situation wherein they are against each other or they are, fighting with each other? There is a possibility. We shouldn't ignore that. There is a possibility that they may fight, and they do fight a lot, and not on a political front, but otherwise also. And these are issues which we are facing, or challenges which we are facing, so far as this relationship is concerned, which we need to work or read about and prepare. Clear? I hope you are getting this. Everybody? Very good. Now, after this was there in our constitution in 1950. 1950 onwards ही हमारे constitution में ये provisions थे already. What did we do is 73rd, 74th amendment. We enacted these amendments and brought in something called as local self-government. Self-government important is. Local तो है ही, identified municipalities and then Panchayati Raj institutions. You must be knowing that. Yes or no? Right. The question is about what we need to prepare is about devolution of powers and finances up to local level. क्या prepare करना है हमें? Devolution of power and finances. Now, devolution को आप फिलहाल I'll explain that later on in the class. You can consider that handing over the power, giving the powers. Let's keep it very simple. Now, giving power to and finances, that is money. Giving power and money to local level government agencies. Right? Right? What are these centers? Panchayat. Block level we have Tehsil. Right? And district level you have Zilla Parishad. In city areas we have got municipalities, municipal corporations, right? Notified areas. There are different types of urban local self-government agencies, right? So all those agencies require finance to run their activities independently. They need powers. Why? Because they have responsibilities. Panchayat has got some responsibilities. So is the municipality, right? Who takes care of garbage in Pune city? Municipal corporation. Who takes care of cleaning as well as health-related issues? Municipal corporation. It has clean drinking water, drainage, you name it, and you'll find that municipal corporation is taking care of it. Right? Some of you might be traveling by PMPL. Right? What is it? Public transport system, right? And that public transport system, is basically for Pune city region. Am I correct? Yes or no? Correct? Now, this is maintained by a separate, independent, self-governing body, local body. PMPL itself is a body, that takes care of it, manages the transport. I hope you are getting it. Now, for this to take place effectively, they need funds. They need funds. You know how effectively are we running PMPL? Except for those electric vehicles, rest of the vehicles are found at times in a very interesting situation. At the middle of the road, they are like, they would say that no, मेरी कोई इच्छा नहीं है आगे जाने की. क्यों नहीं इच्छा है? भाई उसके लिए जो जितना आपको देना था पहले वो दिया नहीं आपने, तो बीच में रुक जाएगा. बस हो गया आज के लिए, आज का कोटा खत्म. तो देन वी विल मेक वे आउट ऑफ एंड ऑन बोथ साइड्स चलता है वो वही खड़ी जब तक उसको, है ना. देखा आपने कुछ पीएमपीएल आपने देखा रहेगा, बिल्कुल उनको बनाया तो सीधा था, रास्ते पे चलती बिल्कुल ऐसी है. तो दिस इज बेसिकली एन इंडिकेशन ऑफ द फैक्ट that these agencies are under burden. They are running short of resources, being more particular. So finances up to local level. आपके सिलेबस में responsibilities क्यों नहीं लिखा गया यहाँ पे? Powers and finances लिखा हुआ, because these are the two crucial aspects of governance. Whereas responsibility wise, if you look at local self-governed agencies, they have all sort of responsibilities. Central government every day would come up with a plan and a policy, and would ask these local self-governed agencies to execute. Because that's where common and ordinary people come into contact with the government first, right? That is the first point of contact, right? So what government expect is उज्ज्वला स्कीम पहला, या फिर चलिए आप पीडीएस की बात कर लो, पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम. पहला पॉइंट ऑफ कांटेक्ट कहाँ? लोकल एजेंसी, जहां पे आपका वो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेंटर है, वहां पे पहला कांटेक्ट होगा. तो बेसिकली वही लोकल सेल्फ गवर्नमेंट एजेंसीज हैं, उनके ऊपर ही सभी रिस्पांसिबिलिटीज. और रिस्पांसिबिलिटीज की बात नहीं हो, दे हैव इनफ ऑफ रिस्पांसिबिलिटीज टू टेक केयर ऑफ, राइट? दे डोंट हैव पावर्स टू डू द सेम एंड फॉरगेट अबाउट फाइनेंसेस, right? And that's the reason why we have this point in syllabus. And so we have to look at local self-governed agencies from this perspective, and we have to prepare it that. Now, next point that we have for discussion in syllabus is separation of powers. Next, we have separation of powers, and let's understand this. Separation of powers between various organs. अलग-अलग organs है state की. Various organs, dispute redressal mechanism and institutions. So let's understand this also and the scope of this particular thing. So as you are talking about something called as legislature, then there is something called as executive, and yes, this is something that you all know, right? Let's begin with this. So what is the function of legislature? Correct, it makes laws. What is the function of judiciary? Adjudication if so required. And what is the function of executive? Yes, correct, implementation. Basically what would they will frame, they will implement, right? And they will see to it that the framing as well as implementation is according to constitution. That is what is their duty. And these duties have been, fairly demarcated under constitution. This demarcation is purposeful. It is essential at the first place and has been purposefully done. Let's take an example. How many of you know election commission? Almost everybody. Very good. Now, recently Supreme Court said that there is a judgment which says that now the appointment of Chief Election Commissioner would be made by a body of 3 members. Chief Justice, Honorable Prime Minister, and then Opposition Minister. Correct? These 3 members or these 3 individuals would be part and parcel of that body which will select. the election commission. My question is, why do we need to select election commissioner this way? Let's hand over election ka department or election ka responsibility to Home Minister. Home Minister will take care of elections. Nahin? Then Prime Minister, let's give it to the Prime Minister. No? In case of state, at least chief ministers. You understand what will happen. Even if you don't understand it clearly, you can at least sense that probably the elections would not be correct, fair, free, fair, transparent nahi honge. So why do you need them to be free, fair, and transparent? Yes. Somebody said democracy, right? Right? It is to preserve the democracy. It is to preserve the democracy and your and my democratic right to conduct or to participate in free and fair elections. And we have a suspicion. I'm not saying that why should we always, be biased that if the prime minister or maybe chief minister or somebody who is in charge of a particular ministry would always work in a non-transparent. They may, having a department of election, they may execute it properly, but we're not sure about it. So what did we say? What Constitution says? It says that let's keep it separate. See, Election Commission doesn't make law. Am I correct? It doesn't make law, right? It also doesn't actually adjudicate matters, all matters. Takes care of election matters, that is different story. But otherwise, doesn't adjudicate all matters. Har cheez nahi dekhta na Election Commission. And it is also not a court, or for that matter, not a legislature. So what it is? It is basically, if you look at it and its functions, it is basically a type of executive agency. It is type of executive agency, but still we have under Constitution kept it separate, distinct from this executive. You are getting this? Everybody. Now what for? You understood it clearly. What for? If we hand it over to them, something will stand compromised. Some values would not be preserved, isn't it? That's the concern. Am I correct? Right? What if we say, what if we make our Home Minister a Chief Justice? Simultaneously, he is a Chief Justice as well as a Home Minister. You can understand what would happen. Right? Yes or no? Correct? So, or for that matter, a Chief Justice, the Prime Minister. Again, problem. None of these systems that way will work. So what did we do? We created separation, identified their domains, jurisdictional areas, said that let them work separate. Right? This is basically not separation of powers, though as a concept, these words should be used. That is separation of powers. This is basically functional specialization. This is basically functional separation. Judiciary is specialized in adjudicating. Executives are specialized in execution. Legislature is specialized in legislating. Election Commission is specialized in managing elections. CAG is specialized in audit and taking care of transparency in public finance. You are getting it. UPSC, for that matter, is specialized in conducting transparent and fair selection procedure for permanent executives. So what your Constitution proposes is separation, or you can say specialization of functions, basically, or separation of powers. What for? It is to ensure that the governance is smooth and doesn't result into concentration of powers, which would ultimately result into chaos. Right? So we have to talk about, or we have to discuss about, under this point, we have to discuss about the extent to which your Constitution or our Constitution proposes separation. कितना separation propose करता है आपका Constitution? क्या एब्सोल्यूट क्लियर कट डिवीजन है? एब्सोल्यूट ये वहां पे जाके देखेंगे नहीं ना, वो वहां पे जाके, शायद नहीं है हमारे पास एब्सोल्यूट सेपरेशन. So is there then overlap? We don't know. If yes, then what is the extent to which the overlap is? Kitna overlap? Now that extent is our interest. That is what is the precise scope of this point in your syllabus. If you look at the PYQs, you will find that they have asked questions pertaining to this idea, the extent to which this separation is being practiced. It is in other terms called as checks and balances. आपके कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में आपको ये कॉमनली मालूम रहेगा कि चेक्स एंड बैलेंसेस ऐसे कुछ लिखा, तो उसकी बात हमें करनी है, उसके लिए हमें कुछ चीजें पढ़नी. नेक्स्ट वी हैव डिस्प्यूट रिड्रेसल मैकेनिज्म. सो यू मस्ट बी नोइंग डिस्प्यूट रिड्रेसल मैकेनिज्म इन जुडिशरी, right? But along with judiciary, we have number of other additional agencies taking care of disputes, different types of disputes. Recently, only Lok Adalats have been in news for their incredible work of, disposing of, thousands and lakhs of cases in short span of time. So they are catalytic so far as access to justice is concerned, right? You'll find that they are, doing it in a very best way. So basically an addition to dispute. So Lok Adalats is basically nothing but an alternative dispute resolution mechanism, basically. And apart from that, you'll find that you might have heard about something called as tribunals. National Grain Tribunal, Water Dispute Tribunal. ऐकले तुम्ही असं? Everybody. Company Law Tribunal, which is in news recently. Grain Tribunal भी काफी बार न्यूज में रहता है. ये क्या कौन है, ये क्या करते हैं ये लोग, कहाँ से आते हैं? ये बेसिकली डिस्प्यूट रिड्रेसल की काम करते हैं. नहीं, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में तो ग्रीन ट्रिब्यूनल का नहीं लिखा हुआ कहीं ना, तो कहाँ से आ गया ये अचानक से? सो द टाइम, in fact the situations and conditions in country and in governance create circumstances wherein we need to address them. So we said that let's make some arrangement. So we passed a constitutional amendment, 42nd constitutional amendment, and we created tribunals. These tribunals are tribunals, as you may prefer pronouncing. So these tribunals, what do? They do same work as that of judiciary. Adjudication, solving disputes, dispute redressal mechanism, वही काम करते हैं. तो फिर why is court not doing that? There are few things. Time, and second, specific area or specific issues which are basically highly technical. They don't involve only question of law. सिर्फ लॉ की बात नहीं है, वहां पे कुछ और चीजें भी होंगी जो साइमल्टेनियसली वो मैटर में देखें. Water dispute tribunal. It's not that we cannot go to the court for water disputes, but then first court would say that go and file a matter in tribunal. You see if it can be managed there. Why do you need us? You don't. So these are partially administrative and partially judicial bodies. Not fully judicial, not fully courts. They're not full courts. Some of the tribunals or some of the members who sit on a tribunal as adjudicator, they are retired judges of High Court and Supreme Court. And the others are basically administrators, those who have an experience in that particular domain. Administrators, I mean to say like IAS officers, maybe retired or maybe serving IAS officers, heads of some departments and etc. You'll find that they are members of these tribunals. What do? They redress the concerns, redressal mechanism. पार्टीज में डिस्प्यूट्स जो है उसको रिजॉल्व करने का काम करते हो. जुडिशरी के साथ साथ एडिशनल मैकेनिज्म हमने क्रिएट किया. सो वी हैव टू रीड अबाउट सच इंस्टीट्यूशंस एंड such institutions which are involved in redressal mechanism. समझ में आई बात? So you can see get questions on tribunals. आप थोड़ा सा पीछे जाके PYQs देखोगे आप, you'll find that there are several such questions which have been asked by UPSC on this particular point. Clear? Everybody? Let's move to the next slide. So here we have Parliament. Now for Parliament, and as I see, we have legislature, executive, and judiciary. Now, this slide and next slide talks about structure functions of legislature, executive, and judiciary. So basically, you are expected under the syllabus to prepare for their structure, the constitutional scheme, what constitution provides for legislature at national level, that is parliament, legislature at state level, that is state legislature, which is famously called as state legislative assemblies, right? And state legislative councils in few states. बरोबर विधानसभा विधान परिषद आणि लोकसभा आणि राज्यसभा. I hope you understand that. Very good. So basically, this slide, part of your syllabus, expects that you should be aware about what structure do we have in the parliament and state legislatures, then how and what functions have been allotted to them. In case of parliament and state legislature, conduct of business. How do they perform their functions? How parliament and state legislature passes laws? What are the methods? Which laws are passed in which manner? That we have to study under this topic. And along with that, powers and privileges and issues arising out. So powers and privileges of whom? The members of parliament, MPs, and MLAs or MLCs, right? Their powers and functions, their powers and privileges, special benefits that are given to them, and those we need to study. There are some issues that may arise out of their powers and functions. Here under this topic, we will also talk about disqualifications and qualifications of members of parliament and state legislature, members of state legislature. You might be knowing that one of the members of the parliament, used to be members of the parliament, have been disqualified under some provision of IPC, and he has been now disqualified. He is no more a member of the parliament, but there was an issue. There was an issue in newspaper which talked about disqualification on the grounds of defamation, right? And that has been discussed at length. Now, if you know that these disqualification and qualifications is part and parcel of our syllabus, you will read immediately that particular article from newspaper and just jot down notes if you can. If you cannot, no problem. Later on also you can think of doing that. But you must know what is the syllabus, right? So disqualifications and qualifications. Along with that, there are some privileges of the members of the parliament, right, and members of the state legislature, which are required to be protected or preserved or a sort of guaranteed. For example, there was one, a media person who anchor basically, right, used to speak on his prime time, like every day, and used to refer to chief minister of some state, right, in not a very good tone and in a very good language. So that was, I hope you can make out like about whom I am talking. So that was taken a note of by concerned legislature, state legislature, and action was taken against that particular media anchor, and he was put behind the bars. Then he had to go to Supreme Court, right? Finally, he got bail. That is a different story. But ultimately, action was taken because it was said that it is violating the privileges of members of the house. State legislature का जो member है, उसके privileges violate हो. समझ में आई बात आपको? अब ऐसे issues, these types of issues, you will have to keep a track. Getting it? And those issues, along with while keeping a track of those issues, you will also have to read what is basic about it. So basics you can get to know from your books, right? So if you can connect those basics with what is going on in newspaper, right, that should be sufficient for you to understand and prepare for these topics. Everybody. So privileges and issues arising out of it is next point of our interest. Next, yes. So as I said, here you have to prepare structure, organization, and functioning of executives and judiciary. But not just that. Along with this, you will find that department and different ministries are also mentioned in your syllabus. So if you basically look at these ministries and different departments of the government, it has sort of pyramidal structure. There are, let's say, for example, health. So there are a number of issues of health issues at ground level. And there are some persons or maybe government agencies which will be working for the same. These agencies at top will be headed by a ministry or a minister, health minister, union health minister, right? This minister would have some departments under him or her, and those departments would take care independently of different aspects of health. You are getting it? Health infrastructure would be taken care of by somebody, right? Drugs and drug production would be taken care of by somebody. I'm just giving you an example. For example, budget. For budget, we have finance ministry, right? So finance ministry doesn't only look after budget; it also takes care of taxes and revenue collection and expenditure, etc. Now, for revenue, there is revenue department. Getting it? For budget, there is separate budgetary department which takes care of framing the budget. You're getting it, right? So there are basically channels in a pyramidal structure. You have Minister of Finance at the top, right? And then there are different departments under one single ministry. And the departments you have further more systems or channels of administration, those who would take care of the responsibilities of that ministry. You're getting it, right? What is expected from us under this topic? We need to prepare for this topic from the point of view of you can say organizational efficiency, efficacy, and economy, you can say if you want, right? So basically, whether this system of ministries and departments is effective enough in maintaining, efficient governance. How many ministries do we have? How do they work, right? You might have heard that recently there were allegations that proper communication is not taking place between different ministries, and that has resulted into substantial loss of revenue as well as substantial loss of men, right, on board. Now, this is something which is very important for us to keep a watch on, right, and be ready for mains ka question because that is in news and it is there in your syllabus. You will have to prepare for such types of questions or such types of issues which are there in language. I hope you are getting this. Everybody. Good. Next, we have role in polity of what? Now, here we have pressure groups and formal and informal associations. Let's take an example of pressure groups. Recent example लेते कोई एक जैसे जंतर मंतर. The protest is going on. You know what for? Correct? Initially, what did these people do? They approached Supreme Court. What for? Registering an FIR. Supreme Court ordered that the FIR must be registered. Police was not willing to do that, or maybe they were trying to somehow neglect. Correct? What did they do? They pressurized police to do that. That is pressure. One more example. Farm laws were passed. Some farmers came out of the home and then they, marched towards Delhi. You must be knowing that, right? And they said that we don't want these farm laws. Government tried to convince them. And they also tried to convince government. So this dialogue kept happening for 1.5 years. At times there were tensions between two parties. But ultimately government said that we will withdraw them. And they withdrew. Right? What farmers wanted? Laws to be withdrawn. But they are withdrawn. Where are the farmers now? Went back to the home. Okay, na? Pressure group ka kaam nahi. They come with some purpose. Right. Now the same farmer organizations are supporting the protest at Jantar. And for good cause, like they think that no. Basically, these wrestlers must be supported, right? And they are fighting for justice. We will stand with them. Now this is the pressure group. Now here, the interest, the cause and interest is different. Please look at it carefully. It is different, but they all are somehow connected with it, and they think that no, this is to be. We need to pressurize government to do the justice. They are doing it. MPSC students said that no, MPSC is not fair enough. They pressurize. What change? And where are they now? Must be sitting in the libraries and studying. Isn't it? So basically, what is it? The pressure groups are basically agencies, associations, which all of a sudden would emerge to protect themselves and their interests, right? In interest of others, those who are similarly situated, those who are of the same type and same nature. For them, these pressure groups would work. They create atmosphere or sort of a situation or conducive environment in democracy, which enables people to come together. Those who otherwise, individually, would not dare to speak or demand and put forward their demand. They would come together in group. They can get a sense of strength, and so they can effectively pressurize agencies, government agencies, including courts. I'm not just talking about executives here. We are talking about system as a whole, and they all will be pressurized. And they will get their if their demand is legitimate, right? The governments would cater to their demand. Everyone. That's pressure. है ना? समझ में आ रही है बातें सब? Environmentalist, for example, समझ लीजिए कि कल को government comes with some scheme or maybe some project. Which project लेके आता है government? And for running that project or implementing that project, you will have to clear hundreds of acres of, say, forest. The environmentalists would immediately, organize a protest movement and would say that no, this forest is not to be cleared. RA forest के बाद Chipko movement must be known. What is it? They would suddenly come and say that no, this is not to be done. Who are they? They are basically people, those who are aware about or sensitive about environmental issues, right? And would come together and would tell government that no, you're not supposed to do that. We don't accept this particular decision of yours and change it. So they are all such formal and informal associations, which these associations would, try to pressurize government machinery, state, to bring in positive change, which is of their interest. So we will have to study about them, their organization, their structure, their contribution in polity or maybe in governance. We have to prepare. Next, we have, yes, some of the constitutional bodies and posts. So we were talking about election commission, right? We have election commission, CAG, UPSC, finance commission, commission for OBCs, SCs, STs, right? Then we have attorney general, etc. So there are some constitutional agencies, independent bodies, constitutional posts and bodies. So far as posts are concerned, we can also talk about governor, who keeps himself or herself active every time, to appear in news. You must be knowing that governor otherwise shouldn't be actually choices for that matter. But every now and then somehow he or she of some other state ensures that there is some space in newspaper for him. And we every now and then we see that they are making a presence. So such bodies like governor, we have to study them. Posts we are saying. Everybody. So we have to study constitutional posts, their mandate, their appointment process. Judges and their appointment process is in news again. रुकी नहीं रहा मैटर, रोज कुछ ना कुछ आता है उसको. Central government would say something about it. The judges would say something else. It keeps happening. So let it happen. It's good for us. We have enough of material to prepare, right? And you may expect some question in mains and prelims on the same. So we have to, prepare such things. Then, yes, of course, like Election Commission, CAG, UPSC, Finance Commission, Attorney General, their method of appointment, powers and functions and responsibilities. We have to prepare these bodies from these perspectives or these aspects. Clear? Everybody? Good. Apart from these constitutional bodies, your syllabus also prescribes or adds points wherein it mentions some statutory body, or basically regulatory and statutory and regulatory as a regulatory bodies are essentially going to be statutory. There has to be a law for an agency to use powers. So it is basically a rule of law, correct, and not rule by men. Am I correct? Right? So you have to have a legal backing for your agency to work or to regulate. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by statutory agencies? These are nothing but statute is nothing but act. Synonymous to act, or you can say law. Right? Any body, any institution that is created by some other law or some other act is called a statutory body. Example. Let's take example. So, know this? RBI, Reserve Bank of India. So we have 1934 Act, which supports creation and powers and etc. of Reserve Bank of India. In similar way, might have heard about TRAI, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. OTT platforms को नहीं regulate करता है. मालूम है आपको? अच्छा, सेबी सुने हो? सेबी, सिक्योरिटीज एंड एक्सचेंज बोर्ड ऑफ इंडिया. क्या करता है सेबी? आप रिसेंटली न्यूज में भी है. आपको पता है किस चीज के लिए न्यूज में? सेबी digital currency. Okay. Anything else? Yes, very good. So basically to investigate, point important, to investigate the frauds, if any, in capital market. So ये तो बहुत बड़ा power होगा उनके पास. उनके पास investigation power कहाँ से है? There is a statute, there is a law that creates SEBI, talks about its structure, and also, talks about or provides for powers, different types of powers to be exercised by SEBI. You may come across question on SEBI because it is in news. समझ में आ रही बात? आपके सिलेबस में स्टैट्यूटरी बॉडी लिखा हुआ है. सेबी एक स्टैट्यूटरी बॉडी है, एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट स्टैट्यूटरी बॉडी है बेसिकली, है ना? और वो न्यूज में भी है. हो गया सफिशिएंट आपको प्रिपेयर करने के लिए. सो यू मस्ट प्रिपेयर इमीडिएटली व्हाट सेबी इज, व्हाट इज द स्ट्रक्चर, व्हाट आर इट्स फंक्शंस, हाउ इट परफॉर्म्स इट्स ड्यूटीज, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा. व्हाट फॉर इट वाज इन न्यूज. समझ में आई बात? टेलीकॉम रेगुलेशन, टेलीकॉम बिल हमारे पास अभी, देयर इज अ बिल 2022 का व्हिच इज इन न्यू. ट्राई के ऊपर हो सकता है क्वेश्चन है, टेलीकॉम रेगुलेटरी अथॉरिटी ऑफ इंडिया में. सो how should you look at these points? These are not just points. Basically, this is a syllabus. which says that any statutory body that you find in news, you may consider that it is important for our preparation. समझ में आ रही है बात? There is another approach to prepare this. What? First list down all statutory bodies and start, preparing each and every body. सबका structure बना के. You may do that if you have enough of time to do this. Go ahead and do that, no problem. But better thing is news में देखो, उसके ऊपर prepare करो, वही आने के chances, possibilities ज्यादा होते हैं. पता है क्या? Everyone. Good. So, yes, and then various quasi-judicial bodies as well. I just gave you an example of NGT, है ना? National Green Tribunal and बहुत सारे tribunals. Quasi-judicial, partially judicial. मराठी में बोला जाता है अर्ध न्यायिक. Partially judicial, quasi-judicial bodies. सभी tribunals को हम लोग इसमें डाल सकते हैं. जिनके पास पूरे कोर्ट के पावर्स नहीं, ऐसी सभी बॉडीज, लेकिन जो एडजुडिकेशन का काम करती है, जो डिस्प्यूट रेजोल्यूशन का काम करेगी, लेकिन जैसे सुप्रीम कोर्ट, हाई कोर्ट या फिर डिस्ट्रिक्ट कोर्ट के पावर्स जो होते हैं ना, उस तरह के पूरे पावर्स नहीं होते इनके पास. पार्शियल होते हैं, आधे अधूरे होते हैं. ऐसा क्यों है, मैं आपको ये थोड़ा डिटेल बाद में हम लोग जब लेक्चर में देखेंगे तब समझाऊंगा. लेकिन आप बस इतना समझ लीजिए कि ऐसे कुछ पार्शियली जुडिशियल एजेंसीज हमने क्रिएट की, जैसे ट्रिब्यूनल्स की मैंने जैसे ग्रीन ट्रिब्यूनल की बात, वाटर डिस्प्यूट ट्रिब्यूनल क्या करता है? डिस्प्यूट ही तो रिजॉल्व कर रहा है ना दो पार्टीज का, है ना? तो उसको हम लोग कोर्ट क्यों नहीं बोलते? तो इसके पीछे कुछ टेक्निकल रीजंस, देयर आर सम टेक्निकल रीजंस बिहाइंड why they essentially called as quasi or partially judicial bodies, है ना? But we will discuss them and I will let you know how many bodies do we need to prepare and how exactly. But please remember that if you come across in newspaper some or other tribunal that is in news, right? Don't forget preparing the same. There is a possibility that you may come across question in your mains on such tribunals. Tribunals or tribunals? Let's move ahead. Let's talk about next slide. And here we have something called as development processes, right? The next part of our discussion in paper 2, something called as development processes and industry. कौन सा इंडस्ट्री है? है ना? ये देखो इंडस्ट्री के कंपोनेंट्स. These are industries, right? Please help me if you need second. So, what do you mean by these industries? What does it mean? Yes, what does it mean? NGOs, self-help groups. And have you heard about NGOs? Every one of you? Can you cite some examples? CRY, for example. Right? Then you might have probably heard about Akshay Patra. Looks after what? Food, midday meal. Right? Pani Foundation, very good. So you must be knowing some NGOs, right? What do they do? So Akshay Patra, being more particular, is taking care of midday meal scheme, which was supposed to be run by the government. What is Akshay Patra doing there? Helping government to execute the scheme and thereby contributing in development. There are some NGOs which are working for environmental protection. What do they do then? They also basically help government, bringing it to the notice of the state that such actions of the state are compromising the environment and surrounding, and the state should be aware about eco-sensitive model of development. Correct? You must have heard about, there are several such NGOs which are working for vulnerable sections. NGOs working for animals, animal right activists, NGOs working for women, NGOs working for children, NGOs working for adolescent girls, NGOs working for rape victims, rape survivors, NGOs working for acid attack survivors, etc., etc., etc. Why do we have these NGOs, by the way? If we have state and government to take care of all vulnerables, what these NGOs are doing, from where do they come? Basically, these are part and parcel of our society. We have come together to establish an NGO and then to work at times with government or at times against government, but in favor of rights of some citizens. इसके लिए NGOs बनते हैं. तो फिर वो डेमोक्रेटिक राइट्स हो सकते हैं, वो एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव राइट्स हो सकते हैं, लीगल हो सकते हैं, फंडामेंटल हो सकते हैं, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल हो सकते हैं, बहुत सारे. लेकिन ऐसे सभी कंसर्न्स कॉमन कंसर्न्स जो है, जो डेवलपमेंट में होंगे, उन सभी कॉमन कंसर्न्स के लिए आपको दिखेगा कि कुछ पब्लिक बॉडीज है. मतलब these are not basically statutory agencies, नॉन गवर्नमेंटल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, जो गवर्नमेंट की बॉडीज नहीं है. You are getting it? These are non-governmental agencies, and you'll find that these non-governmental agencies, self-help group भी अगर आप देखोगे, is nothing but a type of non-governmental agency, right? क्या करता है self-help? Have you heard about something called as बिशी? बिशी हा शब्द प्रयोग ऐकलं? काय करतात लोक? Probably people from same profession, same locality, है ना? Then probably at times those who speak same language, maybe share same culture, right? Or maybe of same religion. They come together, right? They pool their resources and they create a sort of capital, right? Which can be used as a microcredit by the members themselves. They need not to go to the bank formally to get the credit, get the loan, right? They can easily get that loan from that so-called smaller self-help group. Right? And they for getting that credit, they need not to keep anything as a collateral. There is a collateral though, right? If you look at these self-help groups, you'll find that the collateral is basically their identity and social status and their image in that particular group or society. So they're basically their identity and their dignity is at stake. Getting it? Right? So they get these loans and find that the self-help groups are, doing pretty good, at least in case of microcredit. Otherwise, the credit was to be given by the state. Government नहीं देना था लोन. समझ लीजिए फार्मर्स की बात करें हम लोग, इजी आसानी से जो लोन मिले फार्मर्स को गवर्नमेंट नहीं देना था, बैंक्स. इन्होंने अपने ही ग्रुप बना लिए छोटे लिए, है ना, जहां पे the larger version of self-help group is nothing but cooperative sector industries. समझ में आ रही बात? सो ये एजेंसीज करते क्या है? जैसे डोनर्स भी आप देख लीजिए, चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट देख लीजिए. What do? They basically help others. Donation need not necessarily be always in the terms of money, isn't it? Right? It can be in any form, in the form of kind also, but ultimately it is donated for public purpose. Right? So these are all players, in development process. Otherwise, a responsibility, legal, constitutional, democratic, responsibility of state, or for today's lecture, simplicity, we will call it as responsibility of government, right? These non-governmental entities are helping government to contribute in development. Samajhte? Everybody. I gave an example of Akshay Patil. Right? So we have to study their role, right? Extent to which they can contribute. Right? What is their positive and negative contribution, if at all, if there is any, in. From you heard about something called as civil society. Must be knowing this all clubbed together is. There are many other players in civil society, but this all clubbed together is basically civil society, right? So we will have to study about civil society's role, right, in governance. Might have heard about FCRA Act recently passed. Central government passed an act. Forget about those who don't know it. That's absolutely fine. Act was passed by central government to control NGOs and their finance. What for? Probably that is required. So probably to that extent today, the resources are being mobilized through NGOs in development. Now, do we have a guarantee or assurance of the fact that these resources, the money that comes as a contribution to NGOs for their work, right? Do we have a guarantee that the money comes and that has been comes essentially from India, or maybe whether it is legally earned money or not? Do we have any clear idea about it? We don't, because this complete sector is not yet been regularized or regulated, sorry, by any specific set of laws. The first law of a sort, which would to certain extent keep control over activities of NGOs, would be FCR. It has its own concerns, own loopholes or lacunas and criticism of that law. But then I'm saying that there is at least something now. And now when you need to regulate something, please understand the extent to which there might be the spread of these bodies. Last year, I think, Supreme Court asked center to deregister 2.5 lakh, more than 2.5 lakh NGOs. The reason being they did not publish their accounts transparently in public domain. They were being deregistered, right? So if you look at the NGOs, number of NGOs which are coming up every year, you'll find that is huge number, and these NGOs contribute as per their capacity in process of development. And that's the reason why we have to study this particular sector, or maybe this particular part. Anything that comes into news pertaining to these agencies, pertaining to different dimensions of development, and then their contributions, will have to keep watch, and accordingly we'll have to prepare. Let's move to the next part, that is vulnerable sections. Now this deals with social justice, right? So here, welfare schemes by center and state, performance of those schemes, right? Mechanisms, laws, institutions and bodies for protection and betterment of protection and betterment of vulnerable sections. So this all, like, you have schemes of the central government, some mechanism, some laws protecting vulnerable sections, some institutions and bodies, right? These bodies, this system has been created, the mechanism has been created to protect vulnerable sections. Now, what do you mean by that? Let's take an example so that you will understand. So, National Women Commission, or National Commission for Women, right, is basically a body, an institution that is created to protect women, to take care of concerns on issues pertaining to women at national level. Correct? Yes or no? Right. Then we have something called as Domestic Violence Act. Domestic Violence Act? Correct, 2005. What is that act? What act provides for? Basically, act provides for protection of women against domestic harassment or violence. Right? Recently, Delhi High Court said that the act doesn't protect men. Right? So men cannot file case under this act for their protection against domestic violence. That means the court recognizes the fact that there can be domestic violence against men, but this act doesn't protect it. That's what they say, right? So specific laws, specific acts, specific provisions which are there for vulnerable sections. Now the question is, why are women vulnerable? Given the fact that we have a society which is patriarchal, social setup and political as well as economic setup, many a times you'll find at different places, different in a different way, may not support women and may not be comfortable for women, right? And so, the structures also may exhibit some sort of vulnerability, may impart some sort of vulnerability to women, and so they need to be protected. Right? And so what is expected here then? So we are expected to make an assessment of such laws, of such institutions. UPSC asked a question on National Women Commission that it is toothless title or it is not effective. So what we need to do is we need to make assessment of, or we need to make an assessment of performance of such laws. I just gave you one example to make you understand. So laws, say Domestic Violence Act has been, will complete 2 decades. So basically, you may come across a question which says that analyze the performance of Domestic Violence Act in India in last 2 decades. So you will have to be ready for this. So that's what we need to do. So in similar manner, schemes, MGNREGA, for example, famous, or maybe we were talking about midday meal, right? You may come across a question to make an assessment of performance of midday meal in last decade. समझ में आ रही है बात? पूरे एक decade का. So what I'm trying to tell you is, under this particular topic, you will have to focus or keep a watch on such schemes which are in debate in last 1 year. I'm saying debate. Every now and then you'll probably come across a news about some other scheme. Every now and then, right? But that is not our target. Otherwise, right? What you should be focusing on, any scheme that has been consistently in news for its performance, and there have been written sufficient articles have been written, in newspaper on performance and say significance of such schemes or such laws or such bodies, then we will have to keep it ready, because then there is a possibility that such questions may appear in mains and also in prelims, right? So that's what we need to do so far as this particular part of our syllabus is concerned, right? Let's move to the next slide. So what do we have next is social sector services. So issues pertaining to development and management of health, education, human resource, poverty, and hunger. Now see, after Corona or during Corona, basically, we came across a lot of issues in health sector, right? And we definitely tried to improve on our status, what we were doing earlier. We are definitely doing much better than what we used to do prior to Corona. Corona definitely taught us so many things, and we have tried to improve on it. So any scheme, health scheme, or any change that government is trying to bring in a health sector, you will find that you may come across a question here in this particular part. It is social sector and services. So issues dealing with or concerning health, management of health sector, management of education sector. We have new education policy now, right? So issues dealing with management of education and education sector. Same applies to human resource, right? For poverty and hunger, for these 2 things, you'll find that questions which UPSC asks in paper 2, right? They almost appear as if like they have come from paper 3. Getting it? So there is an overlap. There is overlap. At least for these 2 points, paper 1, paper 2, and paper 3. In these 3 papers, you'll find that poverty and hunger finds a place. What we will do? We will simply prepare poverty and hunger from basic point of view. We will keep that ready, right? And then we will just see, like, if the question comes in paper 2, poverty and hunger is to be explained, from social justice point of view, right? Plus constitutional and legal point of view, right? Plus governance point of view. If you just can manage to write it, of course, like this much explanation is not enough how to write and how to actually prepare it for paper second. We will see it during our lectures. But then if you could just manage to bring in these aspects of poverty or hunger, right, that should be probably sufficient for writing answers in paper second, right? On the other hand, paper three, you will have to look at it from economy perspective, from the point of view of inclusive growth, right, from the point of view of resource mobilization, employment and employment etc. Getting it? For paper one, you may have to look at it from society point of view, maybe from history and geography point of view. Right? Same points. So take everybody, and you will have to keep that ready. And then whatever comes in newspaper pertaining to poverty, some poverty, hunger index ka kuch hai, right? Just keep that fact ready for you. Right? And which you can use in paper one, you can use in paper three, you can use in paper two. Clear? Everybody. Right? And so that way you will have to prepare this social sector services or this part of your syllabus. This is very dynamic. The reason being, every now and then some new schemes are being initiated by the government in this sector, education, health, and human resource management. Like for example, labor laws, labor code have been passed by the parliament. So that deals with human resource management. Skill India scheme, for example, deals with human resource management. So we have to prepare this again from current. You will probably not, you may get some other book for preparing these points, but I would advise you not to go for books. Look at the basic fundamentals of these points, write them down on paper, right? Educational system in the new education policy, lays down all the basic facts or basic, components that are there for education sector in India. You just list them down and then keep reading newspaper, checking for news and articles in newspaper, which would further give you a different view about education sector in India, its problems, issues, challenges, and some solutions. That should be sufficient. Right? Of course, we will give you some material on this, but then the question is that the matter is, you'll have to, like, say 2025, you are going to make an attempt for mains, or maybe 2024. In that case, you will have to be ready with recent news and recent issues which are being discussed. Right? If you get a book which was written, let's say, in 2-3 years back, and you are going to appear for mains henceforth after 2 or 3 years, right? That would be irrelevant by then. So it is necessary that for these topics, and also for the next slide, you keep in touch with newspaper and don't fail to do that. Otherwise, it would be comparatively difficult to prepare for these topics. थोड़ा difficult होगा. किसी एक बुक पे हमें ये चीजें शायद पूरी तरह से नहीं मिलेगी. थोड़ा मेरे ख्याल से difficult होगा. Next part that we have in our syllabus is governance. This is basically the functional aspect, the most visible aspect of government institutions. This word governance includes both things. On one hand, it includes all those institutions which are there in the syllabus, right? That is government institutions. And on the other hand, it also includes all civil society institutions. तो इससे पहले देखा ना हमने डेवलपमेंट प्रोसेसेस इन इंडस्ट्री, वो पूरा इंडस्ट्री, आई एम टू से लाइक डेवलपमेंट इंडस्ट्री एंड गवर्नमेंट. उससे पहले हमने गवर्नमेंट के स्ट्रक्चर्स या फिर जो भी सिलेबस में होते, these two coming together, they create a situation, right, And that situation, corrective efforts, is today's standard of governance. So it's not only government that is responsible for whatever type of or whatever level of governance that we are experiencing today. Society, civil society, public at large, individual citizens, they all are equally responsible. So here, when we are talking about word governance, right? These terminologies used in your syllabus: transparency, accountability, citizens charter, e-governance, right? These are to be prepared from the point of view of government institutional structure as well as from the point of view of civil society. For example, for transparency, right, or accountability, you'll find that there are, NGOs working for democratic rights in India, right? They want to bring in transparency. They want to make government agencies accountable, and they will keep filing number of petitions in Supreme Court. There was a petition filed in Supreme Court to make an appointment of Election Commission, as I said. Right? Go and check which organization did that. It was an NGO. It is an NGO. So NGO comes as a part of civil society. It went on to file and got the result. And immediately followed, after 2-3 days, they immediately followed and filed one more petition questioning the appointment of the election commissioner, recent election commissioner, Mr. Goyal. They questioned it in court of law. What are they trying to do? They are basically trying to bring in transparency in the process of appointment of election commissioner, and thereby holding those who are making an appointment accountable to people, accountable to constitution, right? And so such these words or these terms, transparency in governance, है ना? आपको नहीं लगता कि गवर्नमेंट हमेशा ट्रांसपेरेंट होना चाहिए? Obviously, every citizen would expect government to be transparent, to be accountable. You ask question and they will answer. They should answer. Correct? There are established mechanisms to do that, but then otherwise, also you will find that you will expect that accountability. You will expect that transparency. Correct? Or efficiency, effectiveness for that matter. Citizens Charter is such a move by members. Citizens Charter is basically such a move that took place recently, and you will find that this citizen charter helps us to understand, know what, when, how, and in how many days, and what cost will you get some service from the state. You go and visit to any government office. You'll find that there is a board, blue color का board देखिएगा ऑफिस के बाहर ही, जहाँ पे citizen charter लिखा है, and that charter would tell you that these are what services are being offered by this particular office. Who is responsible officer? At what cost? In how many days would you get that service? If you want to go for a certificate, income certificate, for example, वहाँ पे लिखा income certificate would be given in 10 days from the date of application, right? In these many rupees, that is a fees. If not given, then there is this particular number to which you will contact and your grievances would be redressed. Immediately, there will be some sort of provision. So, Citizen Charter is again a step towards bringing more accountable government and bringing the same transparency. I just gave you an example just to understand what is the scope. In similar manner, we have to talk about e-governance. E-governance is what? It is nothing but application of ICT, information and communication technology in governance. कुछ नहीं बात. तो उसके कुछ मॉडल्स है, कुछ सक्सेस लिमिटेशंस एंड उसका पोटेंशियल, इसके बारे में हमें बात करनी है या फिर we have to study that. Digital India, for example. E-Seva Kendra and all, we must be aware about that. What do? They're not doing something different. They are providing, the government is providing same services, but now digitally or maybe electronically, using information and communication technology. This ICT or e-governance has made a phenomenal change so far as access, affordability, and availability of government agencies are concerned. Phenomenal change. The government is just a click away from you. Just a click away. Prime Minister, a click away from you. Just like now also if we just Google and for Prime Minister's office, you will get a website. You can open the website and you'll find that there are some tabs wherein you can have an access. You can just write an application or maybe a request and you can drop it there. Of course, Prime Minister himself probably not answer it, but then there are people from government, those who would responsibly take care of your request or maybe your concerns. What point I'm trying to make is sitting here comfortably in Pune, right? At your comfortable time, you can just drop your concern to concerned ministry, concerned office of the state, and you'll get a reply. That's the potential of e-governance. You need not to spend even a penny for it. You just sit here and otherwise, what if you wanted to make an application to Home Ministry? Then you will have to travel all the way from Pune to Delhi, right? Then go and visit the ministry. And the day on which you visit the ministry concerned officer who was to whom you are going to hand over the application, somehow happens to be on leave of 15 days, right? And then you'll have to come back all the way from there. Of course, post office is there and post may help you, but what if you want to, physically hand it over? All this difficulty has been completely removed by technology. Samastya access, affordability, availability of government agencies. We pay electricity bills, right? At what time do you think that you can pay electricity bill? At whatever time. रात को 3 बजे नींद खुली याद है बिल नहीं पाया तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं यार 3 बजे तो कोई गवर्नमेंट ऑफिस तो नहीं खुला रहता तो वेबसाइट पे जाओ क्यूआर कोड को स्कैन कर लो या फिर अदरवाइज बैंक ट्रांजैक्शन कर लो गूगल पे तो है ही पेटीएम भी तो है बहुत सारे गिविंग तो घर पे बैठे बैठे रात को 3 बजे आपने यू पेड इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बिल है ना अदरवाइज क्या करना पड़ता नेक्स्ट डे वेट करना पड़ता और नेक्स्ट डे पता चले गवर्नमेंट का हॉलीडे होती तो है ना चीजें ऐसी होता नहीं होता आपका ऑफिस था नेक्स्ट डे आपने बिल्कुल लंच टाइम में टाइम निकाल के चले गए वहां पे पता चला उनका भी लंच चल ना बिल पे हुआ ना लंच यहाँ पे क्या है आपकी कन्वीनियंस के हिसाब से क्लिक करो पेमेंट हो ई गवर्नेंस एप्लीकेशन ऑफ आईसीटी मैं वही बता रहा हूँ आपको जो एक्चुअल आप करते हो या फिर आप देखते हो इसके बियॉन्ड भी काफी सारे एग्जांपल्स है जो हम लोग बात कर सकते हैं जिसकी but then this is something that will help you understand what e-governance is without making it unnecessarily complicated. So we have to talk about or we have to deal with that particular part here under this section of your syllabus. Of course, then we have something called as आप जहां जाना चाहते हो है ना जाना चाहते हो आपके रिस्पॉन्स से तो नहीं लग रहा कोई बात नहीं civil services and its role in democracy में civil service क्या रोल प्ले करती so strengthening the nationality or maybe national identity integrity maintaining peace contributing in development. Then promoting and propagating democratic ideas. So how are they doing it? You will have to read it in newspaper, get examples, right? You can get the material also. Like it's not very difficult thing to prepare for. But yes, of course, like every year you will find at least there is one question on this point in mains. You will have to prepare that also. Okay. So that's it. So thank you so much. So that was in brief, I would say, journey through the syllabus, right? Please see to it that you read every day. Aika. Please see to it that you read it every day, right? If you want to by heart it, do that. If you don't, and if you just want to somehow remember it, that's your question altogether, or your choice altogether. But please make sure that you remember each and every point of the syllabus. And I also talked about those 4 pillars. You may add few more pillars in that preparation. No problem with that.